Right now, we're wondering what the third millennium holds in store for us. What will become of humanity? Where are we going? What if the past held some of these answers? Understanding where we've come from may give us an idea of where we're heading. Revisiting the great eras in history is a way of getting to know ourselves better. So why not come with me on a journey of discovery to find out how we got here? Throughout history, there have been decisive steps for mankind. In Genesys, you can be there as these great events unfold, and who knows, maybe you'll even be able to play your part. Let me tell you a great story, the wonderful story of human evolution. It all began with a huge explosion, the Big Bang, about 12 billion years ago. And before that, there was nothing. At least that's the theory. It took 1 billion years for the first galaxies to form, and another 5 billion years for our solar system to be created. It was around this time that our Earth came into existence. It then took a mere 2 billion years for the Earth to cool down and for an envelope of gas to gradually cover the globe. Ammonia, methane, carbon dioxide were some of the gases constituting the atmosphere. And yet it was only 3 billion years ago that life appeared. Primitive life forms frolicked in the original melting pot. And from carbon dioxide, they produced oxygen that was essential for our lungs in the future. It was another 2 billion years before more complex forms of life began to emerge. Thereafter, things started to speed up. First came the fish, and then the batrachians, who were the first to reach dry land. This was 310 million years ago. By successive mutations and adaptations, life eventually took the form of the famous dinosaurs, who reigned for almost 200 million years. Then all of a sudden, they disappeared, making way for mammals that gradually diversified and evolved, leaving many species extinct along the way. Forests made way for the savannas in East Africa, about 8 million years ago. It is here that famous Lucy and her fellow creatures, whom we call Australopithecus, evolved. These new kind of primates walked erect. Even though they still climb trees now and then, old habits die hard. Did they stand upon their hind legs to see beyond the high grass of the savannah? No one will ever know. In any case, they lived there for at least 3 million years. Then, about 2 million years ago, they gave way to those we call Homo habilis. These ancestors were endowed with special skills, that of striking one stone hard against another, in order to get a sharp edge, for example. Imagine the number of crushed fingers and fruitless attempts it took to get to these sublime cutting objects, humanity's first tools. These human beings did have the ability to communicate, however primitively. The young, seeing their elders throwing stones, probably began doing so themselves, no doubt causing a few accidents over the years. The Homo habilis had the ability to remember their actions. Thus began the transmission of knowledge. These primitive gestures make us smile, and yet they show an amazing capacity of adaptation and constitute a decisive stage in humanization.
The mythology of this period represented nature as a living being and established connections between the cosmos, the human body, and the entire animal and vegetable world. Affinities between certain elements were at the root of the totems and magical practices involving transformation from one state to another. Shamanism was one of the mainstays of prehistoric societies. The mythology of this period represented nature as a living being and established connections between the cosmos, the human body, and the entire animal and vegetable world. The mythology of this period represented nature as a living being. The mythology of this period represented nature as a living being and established connections between the cosmos, the human body, and the mythology of this period represented nature as a living The mythology of this period The mythology of the mythology The mythology of this period represented nature as a living being and established connections between the
Around 2 million years ago, Homo erectus left Africa to go to Europe and Asia. Around 500,000 years ago, they discovered that some materials were more suited than others for making tools. They began to sharpen flint, working it carefully into different shapes and designs to suit their various needs. Sometimes, during their long walks through the savannas, they came across a strange thing that was part animal, part spirit, something that was impervious to their stone tools. One day, some of the more courageous men cautiously started to poke at the dying flames of a fire. Amazing! The thing came from the sky and had a strange property of climbing up twigs and burning them. Homo erectus soon began using these flames to cook food, to scare animals, to light caves, and to keep himself warm. What a discovery! Homo erectus evolved, stood up straighter, and the size of his skull increased. He made use of fire and now possessed various tools. Massive numbers of babies died at birth, and life expectancy did not exceed 30 years. Added to this was the fact that the Earth entered into an ice age that lasted nearly 500,000 years. Man's adaptation to these climatic changes played an important role in his evolution. To protect himself, Homo erectus dressed in fur, built huts for himself, and settled at or near the entrance of caves.
The mythology of this period represented nature as a living being.
Rub, rub, quick, quick, fire.
Careful! Push it! Push!
Easy does it.
Rub, rub. Quick, quick, fire.
Ow!
Careful. Push it, push.
Easy does it.
We are somewhere in the Near East, between 15,000 and 9,000 BC. The harvest is not enough for the tribe to feed itself. For a long time now, men have had to venture further and further to bring back food. Once again, man shows amazing abilities to adapt. Was the sight of a young shoot emerging from the soil, at the spot where men generally spat their pips, that made one of them realize that these seeds could give birth to another plant? The fact remains that agriculture appears all around the globe. Wheat and barley were cultivated in the Near East, sorghum was planted in Africa, rice and millet in Asia. And much later, maize, potato and cassava were grown in America. Gradually, man also learned to domesticate animals. First, it was the dog about 12,000 years ago. Then, about 8,000 years ago, it was the turn of goats and sheep and cows. Milk from these animals quenched the thirst of their breeders and helped them make cheese. Their way of life changed completely. Man became sedentary, settling in one place and growing his food. He learned to control nature, no longer dependent on its goodwill. To defend their new possessions, cultivators formed small towns, built on hillsides that were sometimes surrounded by walls. For the sake of security, man had resolved to sacrifice part of his freedom. This was a boon as well as a bane for civilization. Society began to take on a structure about 5,000 years ago. Craftsmen, soldiers, merchants, and governments came into existence. The first towns were founded in Mesopotamia. Global human population was close to 4 million.
Come on now. Come on, my beauty. Go on now. Heave ho! Heave ho! Come on now. Come on, my beauty. Go on now.
This should keep the animals fed over the winter. Now roll on sundown. We're going to dance and sing the night away.
Oh, typical. You can dance when the job's done.
Yeah. Anyway, the chief slaughtered the sheep, so I'm going to eat and then dance.
I won't be doing any dancing unless my husband's there. I can't sleep without him.
I could drink some of that now.
There'll be time for drinking when the work is done. Hold the animal tight while I fleece the beggar.
I could drink some of that now.
There'll be time for drink.
The horned animals are not as docile as the woolly ones. I reckon I picked the right job.
This way! Whoa! Don't get excited.
Oh, that one. Always trying to escape.
So, getting much milk? So, getting much milk?
A little milk for the sheep shearers. A little milk to take back to the village.
Shall I put some more wood on the fire to keep the pots hot?
Yes, but not too much. The clay has to cook slowly or it'll crack.
Shall I put some more wood on the fire to keep the pots hot?
Yes, but not too much.
Thread the wool thick or thin, and the cloth will be heavy or light.
Spin, spin, the cloth will be soft and fine. Spin, spin.
Honey glazed pots. Salt fired pots.
The earth is beautiful, the harvest is plentiful. It's a beautiful time of year.
The mythology of this period represented
Agriculture demonstrated man's desire to impose his will on nature. Specialization forced producers to exchange their goods and possessions, and to travel further afield, to find buyers with whom they could trade. Sumeria, 3000 BC. Leaning over his wheel, a potter shapes a container that he will use to store the milk of his goats. Suddenly, one of the goats sends everything flying with a nasty butt of its horns. The potter's wheel hurtles down a slope at great speed. The potter is about to howl with anger, but all of a sudden, his eyes light up. It's a sign from the gods. The wheel could be used to roll chariots. The first vehicle on wheels was about to be born. A fictitious anecdote, of course. Another decisive system in the development of trade was about to appear: navigation. Since the 15th century BC, the Chinese, the first great sailors, had been sailing to and fro across the Pacific. Did they reach other continents? That remains a mystery. 500 years later, out of vital necessity, the Phoenicians learned to tame the sea and founded many trading posts and colonies along the Mediterranean coast. Merchants journeyed further and further away from home in search of raw materials, and famous trade routes were forged for silk, for spices, for incense, for gold. Humans discovered the planet and the other human beings who lived on it.
All merchants leaving with the caravan must ready themselves. You shall have 2 full moons to sail up the Tigris Valley, and a half moon in which to reach the mouth of the Nile at Memphis. The Egyptian vessel will wait for you until the 3rd full moon.
From there we will sail up the Nile and return with animal skins, gold and ivory. And you, my love, what is your decision? Will you accompany us?
Indeed I shall. The wheeled cart will carry the load, and if I grow tired, I can ride on it.
My friend, your slave raises the devil with his constant hammering. My wife is being driven to distraction.
Well, you can tell your wife that your cart won't be ready to leave with the caravan if my slave ceases his work. Does his work not please you?
On the contrary, it pleases me greatly. Your carts carry much more goods than my slaves, and they eat less too.
The whole village speaks of nothing but the Nile caravan. But will any merchants remain here to sell the fruits of the harvest? Or will we have to return to the old days when everyone worked their own little patch of land to survive?
I see that you mock me, my friend. But you know that I shall be staying here to keep trade going. I'm not unhappy about it either. I'm not one of those who seeks adventure.
Well, what are you waiting for? My jars are ready for loading, so load them.
My friend, your slave raises the devil with his constant hammering. My wife is being driven to distraction.
Well, you can tell your wife that your cart won't be ready to leave with the caravan if my slave ceases his work. Does his work not please you?
On the contrary, it pleases me greatly. Your carts carry much more goods than my...
Captain, are you going to come and see me then? I have a few comforts to share that will warm your soul. You will return to your work with renewed vigor.
The excitement of the town is not yet apparent. It's still too hot. But in a few hours, the crowd will gather to see the caravan arrive. I have a little time remaining to enjoy the peace and quiet before I must board the boat.
Special prices! Buy now before everyone arrives! Take advantage of the special prices!
Captain, sir, the caravan will be arriving soon. We must bring the slaves to load the goods.
You are far-sighted and well-organized, my friend. And I value your advice greatly. And all bodes well for this voyage. The moon is propitious, the winds are mild, and the slaves shall be there to load the boat. If we find a good crew, we can leave upon the 3rd crescent moon.
Mistress, the servants have prepared a perfumed bath for you. After a good massage, you should rest for a time. They say that the caravan is not far away now, and the night will be long.
I shall follow you willingly, and I await this night with impatience.
Oh, this jewel suits you so well, lovely lady. It could indeed have been made for you.
You have seen well that this jewel pleases me, and then you ask an inflated price for it. I shall give you half of what you ask. That is its value.
For this jewel? Impossible! I'd have to sell my children to eat.
Often derived from animal totems, the form and characteristics of the gods and spirits that presided over the activities of men began to show increasing links with the structure of the sky and the earth. The sun, the moon, and the stars were seen both as the home of the gods and powers in themselves, sometimes benign, but also sometimes dangerous for strangers and those lacking wisdom in their dealings with them. Often derived from animal often derived from animal totems, the form and characteristics of the gods and spirits that presided over the activities of men often derived from animal totems, the form and characteristics of the gods often derived from
Captain, are you going to come and see me then? I have a few comforts to share that will warm your soul. You will return to your work with renewed vigor.
The excitement of the town is not yet apparent. It's still too hot. But in a few hours, the crowd will gather to see the caravan arrive. I have a little time remaining to enjoy the peace and quiet before I must board the boat.
Mistress, the servants have prepared a perfumed bath for you. After a good massage, you...
Phoenicians braved the seas and opened the pewter route, a mineral that was considered precious at that time. So around 4,000 years ago, fire revealed new properties to man. He observed that some stones melted when they were heated. When the liquid that was produced dried, it turned into a bright and malleable material, suitable for making objects. Man discovered pewter and its advantages. He then learned to mix pewter with copper to make bronze. 500 years later, the Chinese civilization of the Shang dynasty independently entered the Bronze Age. This first form of metallurgy signaled the end of the Stone Age. Chiefs used this discovery to consolidate their domination. But not all had access to an axe, a knife, or a sword made of bronze. The Iron Age began much later, in about 1100 BC, in Anatolia. The Anatolians were the first to forge this new metal. Its use then spread from about 750 BC. Metalworkers, particularly the Celts, made pieces of jewelry and luxury objects, yet iron was still scarce. And then all tools changed completely. Dishes in iron, more hard-wearing than those in ceramic, began to be used. In agriculture, an iron plowshare was invented and soil could be plowed more deeply. Then, of course, Swords were forged in iron, more supple and resistant than those made of bronze, and extremely effective. These were new weapons.
You take great care with this dagger, blacksmith.
That's because it's for a great man, my lad. He's crossed several lands to bring me stones containing precious metal.
You take great care with this dagger, blacksmith.
That's because it's for a great...
Iron needs to be hotter than bronze. Put in 2 units of wood and work your bellows. If you want to make a dagger, you need 100 units of iron.
I know, Master. And for a bronze bracelet, you need 5 units of tin for every 50 of copper. And for a helmet, 25 units of tin for 250 of copper. Oh, Master, I'm so happy that you have accepted me as an apprentice.
I chose you because I believe you'll make a fine foundry worker. You see things in the flames that the others cannot.
Oh, what beautiful jewels you have. It would please me greatly to have one. That one there with a stone set in molten metal.
The Master has sent me with this message, Chief.
I know that he has asked for gold, but iron is 8 times more valuable. I want you to stay here and load up the iron. I'll sort out the gold.
But, Chief, the Master will have me beaten.
Do what I tell you and keep quiet, or I shall have you put to death.
Yes, Chief.
Smaller pieces. You must choose rocks full of iron and leave the lighter ones. Smaller pieces. You must choose rocks full of iron.
There may well be plenty of tin to be found in this country, but how cold it is! When we're done, I certainly won't waste any time in returning with a cargo on the next ship. I hope the people of this land will soon realize where their interests lie and give up their stupid wars to concentrate on trade.
Often derived from
The Master has sent me with this message, Chief.
I know that he has asked for gold, but iron is 8 times more valuable. I want you to...
There may well be plenty of tin to be found in this country, but how cold it is! When we're done, I certainly won't waste any time in returning with a cargo on the next ship. I hope the people of this land will soon realize where their interests lie and give up their stupid wars to concentrate on trade.
Iron needs to be hotter than bronze. Put in 2 units of wood and work your bellows. If you want to make a dagger, you need 100 units of iron.
I know, Master. And for a bronze bracelet, you need 5 units of tin for every 50 of copper. And for a helmet, 25 units of tin for 250 of copper. Oh, Master,
You take great care with this dagger, blacksmith.
That's because it's for a great...
Oh, what beautiful jewels you have. It would please me greatly to have one. That one there with a stone set in molten metal.
You take great care with this dagger, blacksmith.
That's because it's for a great man, my lad. He's crossed several lands to bring me stones containing precious metal. Just like I'm training you in the secrets of the forge, I've trained it to recognize rock that contains metal. Our partnership is made in heaven.
There may well be plenty of tin to be found in this country, but how cold it is! When we're done, I certainly won't waste any time in returning with a cargo on the next ship. I hope the people of this land...
The development of trade and the need to administrate it no doubt led to the creation of writing. It is said that to strike a deal, Sumerian merchants exchanged balls of clay containing tokens, symbolizing objects of trade. An interesting system, except that things got more complicated when 300 goats had to be traded against 60 cows. Never mind. It was enough to mark their number on balls, and then on tablets. It was thus that the Sumerians probably began to develop the first writing, consisting of small figures representing objects and ideas. The first figures were later simplified into small lines that were etched in clay, with a reed. Each line looked like a nail, hence the name cuneiform. Other scripts were also invented. Egyptians drew pictures to represent words, the famous hieroglyphics. The script used by the Chang dynasty in China is still recognizable in modern Chinese. In about 1000 BC, cuneiform script was at its peak, and it had spread to all countries in the Middle East, but it was very complicated. It was probably in order to communicate rapidly with their customers that Phoenicians adopted a script that distinguished between consonants and vowels, thus making it possible to use a limited number of signs. Letters were born. In the field of mathematics, the tools that we use today originated in different parts of the world. Mesopotamians invented a complicated form of algebra. The Mayans in Central America invented the zero, a symbol representing emptiness, while it was the Indians who gave it its operational value.
I don't want him to go. He might never return. Why trust this stupid document that nobody can understand?
I'm sure that the instructions on the document are correct. There's so much to gain from us using this new route. I want this ivory to be taken to An Yang. Your husband is the only one capable of organizing this caravan. He alone can read this document. He will choose the camels and load the ivory. I have every confidence in him.
How long will it take to translate the documents?
I have done a large part of it, but there are still a few details remaining. Come back to see me again tomorrow, and it will be ready.
Good. I'm counting on you. Until tomorrow.
Do you think he's going to try his luck?
No, I think not.
But look, he's at the scribes. They're the only ones who can decipher these dotted markings made by the Sumerians.
His wife will never let him go.
You'll see.
Fine. What can I do for you meanwhile?
Give me some dates then.
Clear golden honey! Who wants some honey? My honey is the color of the sun! Honey, anyone? Clear golden honey! Get your honey here!
Jewels and trinkets, ivory to shape yourselves. The choice is yours. Jewelry or rough ivory, which is it to be?
Give me 12 galettes and some olives.
Are you paying with money?
No, I will bring you chickens.
Well, I prefer money.
Take my chickens.
No. Go sell them to the man down there. They say he needs chickens. Get money from him.
Oh, all right. But give me the galettes first.
An Egyptian came to see me some time ago. He was alone and claimed to have discovered a new route from Anyang to Ur. He left a document with me. Unfortunately, it is written in this strange writing the Egyptians use.
I should be able to find someone who can translate it correctly.
Here is the document. I have carefully copied the marks made by these distant Eastern people, but I can see that it contains information about a new route to Memphis, and that's about it. I can't make head nor tail of it.
Listen to me carefully. If we can translate this document, our fortune is assured.
All right, I'll try again.
Do you remember Ulick, who everyone thought was dead? Apparently, he's discovered a new route from Ur to Memphis. The scribe has produced a document from it. The whole town is awash with excitement. Nabokadis wants to put together a caravan to take incense to Memphis. But the caravan master is not in agreement.
We're not the only ones who want to take the new route, and those who hesitate are afraid of being mocked.
Everyone will want to take it.
Yes, but only those who can decipher this strange hand will be able to follow the route correctly.
When they traded goats against cows, Sumerians engaged in barter, the oldest form of trade. They mainly used small pieces of metal, or grain that had to be weighed each time. In about 550 BC, the king of Lydia had the first coins minted. They were pieces of gold or silver, or a mixture of both, with predetermined weights and values. Coins first appeared in China in about 900 BC and took the shape of small knives. Also, at or around this time, local rulers began to regulate trade within their cities as best they could. In about 1750 BC, Hammurabi, king of Babylon, had a compendium of laws inscribed on a diorite stela. He did this so that anyone could know whether he was acting in accordance with the laws of the land. Trade developed. Towns offered conditions that were favorable for trading. The construction of a network of roads encouraged the development of trade in Europe, as well as the creation of large public markets or fairs. Traders and craftsmen came together to form a new social class, the bourgeoisie. Widespread slavery supplied the main workforce. The need to defend this newly acquired wealth from those who would take it by force eventually led to the creation both of states and empires.
Feel the quality. A great business opportunity. In just 3 moons, the caravan will arrive, and this cloth will make you plenty of money. You'll be able to buy a few camels, and if you sell the camels, you can buy wine. Take the advice of a successful merchant.
Look at these magnificent logs. Their color would charm the gods. With this wood, you can make the finest chests in the land.
Buy my lovely pots. There won't be enough for everyone. Jars for olives, jars for wheat, pots that will keep your water cool and pure. Don't delay now.
Spare a few coins for a poor beggar.
Upon my word, what a fine weapon! In my country, I cannot find such quality metal. I'll give you half of the wood that I have brought with me, and 15 remnants from my finest cloth.
Now, my friend. You go sell your wood and your material at the market, then come back and see me when you have the money.
These caravan folk seem very interested in my metals. I knew that metal would be good for trading.
while the Chinese retreat behind the Great Wall, and Central America saw the disappearance of the Mayan civilization and the advent of the Aztecs, the Western world of the Middle Ages witnessed an era of great turmoil. Great empires were built and then broken apart, with new peoples coming from the East and settling down by force. During this period, salvation religions coming from the Middle East flourished. Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, these spiritual powers alternated between exchanges and confrontations for centuries. In spite of these troubles, Europe prospered. Exchange and trade helped develop towns and means of production and communication. It was a real economic revolution. In the town of Mainz, at the heart of Europe, the young Gutenberg was working with his father, a goldsmith in charge of minting coins. In around 1455, after 20 years of research, he got the idea of using mobile metal characters for printing. Being very resistant, these did not get deformed in spite of extensive use. He thus made one of the greatest discoveries of all time, the printing press. Hadn't anyone thought of it until then? Not quite. In the 11th century, Pi Sheng in China had already thought of using mobile characters, but these were made of clay and therefore were not very resistant. Language, thought, and religion were changed by this discovery. A written culture took the place of an oral culture. The printing press changed ways of thinking and learning with a new teaching method that was based on books and pictures. These became new mediums for the transmission of knowledge.
Since the master Pi Shen invented this movable type, we've been able to make several pages of a book in a short time. I don't have to carve a new plate each time.
I don't think we've heated the bark, hemp, and cloth enough. I can't manage to mix it.
Just keep stirring. The paste has to be smooth and creamy to make high-quality paper.
Do you remember that time we left the hemp mats in the water?
Of course I do. How the master beat us. The mat was ruined, all soggy.
Yes, but when it dried out, it gave the master ideas. Now he makes paper out of it.
More than 10,000 print runs and the characters are still not ruined. These metal letters possess unbelievable resistance. And how are the presses behaving?
They are holding up well, Master Gutenberg. And we have enough letters in the cases to prepare pages in advance. See, the workers have already begun.
Bravo, that's perfect. It's imperative that they're careful to position them correctly.
I must be careful. The characters must be positioned correctly, or I will have to answer to Master Gutenberg.
The huge social upheavals experienced as the ancient civilizations crumbled left populations in disarray well beyond the Mediterranean region. Religion stepped into the gap left by the shortcomings of governments, where there were any, and took charge of the imparting of cultural and technical knowledge. But new problems were to rear their heads, and another shift in the balance of power began to occur.
By the end of the Middle Ages, the printing press had spread all over Europe, and yet the world was very divided. Nobody from the West had yet explored the 5 continents. People like Marco Polo, who had traveled as far as China, were very rare. At the start of what was later to be known as the Renaissance, a discovery fever gripped Europe. Merchants looked for new routes that led to India. The Turks, who had seized Constantinople, virtually blocked all exchanges with far-off Asia. The Portuguese were the first to embark in search of a new route to the east by going round Africa. These bold sailors grew rich, and they didn't leave the African coasts without having captured a few slaves who would be put to work in mines and plantations. Christopher Columbus was convinced that the Earth was round. He wanted to search for India and thought that he could do so by sailing west and crossing the Atlantic. In 1492, his fleet reached America. Other expeditions followed. Initiated by the Portuguese, other Western countries too began their conquest of the oceans. Spain, of course, but also England, France, and the Netherlands. But who would be the first to go round the world and ensure that his sovereign would dominate conquered lands?
A Portuguese named Magellan is proposing to avoid the spice route, of which Portugal has exclusive control, and reach the Moluccas from the west. He wants to sail around the New World, and King Charles has actually agreed to help this sorry fellow. I'm afraid the chest behind me is for him.
The writings of the saints cannot be challenged. The Earth is not round, or we would be walking around with our heads on the ground. It's absurd.
Only the land at the center of the world is intended for human beings. The sea, the Garden of Eden, and the mountains surrounding it are forbidden to us. We are risking a terrible curse.
We will be happy to seal the disappointment of this upstart Manuel the First. Ever since Vasco da Gama returned from the Indies, Portugal has been overflowing with riches. Little Magellan's project is ambitious, but risky. I hope we will not have cause to regret the decision to finance his voyage.
You shall have 3 of your captains on the ships. The benefits of this expedition are obvious. Magellan has several points in his favor. He has made the voyage to Malacca several times, and he appears to have studied all the secrets of the first expeditions. And anyway, what real value have these old vessels and their unexceptional crews?
That's true. True indeed.
Something troubles you? What is it?
Well, I have drunk and eaten to my heart's content at the inn, but I don't have the money to pay for it all.
Sail with me on Magellan's expedition and your problems will be over.
The expedition...
Something troubles you? What is it?
Well, I have drunk and eaten to my heart's content at the inn, but I don't have the money to pay for it all.
Sail with me on Magellan's expedition and your problems will be over.
The expedition does not seem likely to succeed. But I know you well. If you're going, there must be money to be made. If you're the bosun, then I'm the helmsman.
Innkeeper, fill her up again. I'm leaving soon on a long voyage and I've got money.
I can't feed an entire crew with what you're offering me.
When they're at sea, they can eat whatever they can.
Ay, Santa Purissima de la Guardia. In God's name, what an infernal racket. Can't you go and discuss it somewhere else?
Upon my word, this ship isn't as young as it was.
Ooh, she's seen better days, too.
Perhaps we shouldn't have signed up so readily.
Mind you, I'd rather risk death seeking my fortune than wait to be caught by the law.
I've heard tell they eat their enemies.
But they seem so friendly. Anyway, it looks like there'll be no more eating rats and rotten biscuits for the rest of the voyage.
If we only knew what was going through their heads. They've got no soul. If they change their minds, we'll be nothing but a meal to them. In any case, we have no choice if we want to keep heading south.
My men are going to take the water and supplies aboard.
For the little piece of iron that catches the fish, he gives you these fruit. For the comb, he offers you a pair of geese. For the jewel, he gives you these hens.
White man have big canoe to go across the water. White man has great powers. White man is our friend. We are honored to exchange these gifts.
They are sick. Their skin is white like my grandmother when she died. They must be dangerous.
They give us precious gifts for a few poultry with which to continue their voyage. And anyway, it would be better to remain friends. Their weapons are powerful.
I still think they are strange.
Go on, faster, faster! The cursed Portuguese are looking for us, and we must be gone before they reach these waters. Faster, for the love of God! We must take these spices back to Spain.
There are the spices, sir. This is pepper, and that is saffron.
Now that we have found a new route and loaded the spices, we can return to Spain. Then glory and riches shall be ours.
Despite the fact that the monarchs were preoccupied by constant wars, the Western world became richer and more powerful, thanks to its conquests and journeys. The West was a great intellectual hotpot. Alienated from the evolution of other societies, it sometimes believed that it was the center of the world. Some reformers, like Calvin and Luther, did not hesitate to challenge the supreme power of the Catholic Church. Royalty took advantage of this by settling personal scores through wars. scientists rediscovered and developed medicine, astronomy, physics, mechanics, and attempted to explain the world around them in a different way. Art, though still under the influence of religion, turned away from the mere illustration of religion to suggest new styles and new images. New ideas for building better societies spread through Europe. Humanism, the accumulation of knowledge, and the desire for a better world led to social as well as technological upheavals. Up until now, men had been using energy from animals, wind, water, and of course, the human strength of laborers to help them carry out their work. Scientific curiosity paved the way for increased mechanization of work. And so it was, for better or worse, that steam energy came into the world.
How did it not occur to me sooner? I've been flogging a dead horse with these plans for weeks now when the answer was there all the time. The piston, the cylinder, the separate condenser, expansion. The pressure's higher than that of air. Newcomer was losing too much heat from his machine, but this one has a much better performance.
Well, I hate this contraption's giving out. I could do with a drink. My throat's dry as a bone.
That's true what they say, my lad. This machine gets as hot as the devil's armpits.
Do you hear? Antoine's changed jobs of mine. There's a machine now that brings up the water. The whole village is talking it.
You seen William's youngest daughter? A fine-looking wench, eh? A girl like that is hard to find here. Most of town's girls are pale as ghosts.
Don't get your hopes up. William's girl ain't for you. He don't want her to come back to town. He don't want her working on them new looms that are being made. He reckons they send him crazy in no time.
Yeah, too right. He is pleased to have her out away to his brother's farm. She'll find an husband down there, no mistake. Gather round, gather round. Mr. Trevithick's engine is about to be launched. Watch progress taking place. Ladies and gentlemen, gather round, gather round.
This machine had better move. All my effort will be for nothing if it fails to advance. As for those who say that its weight will cause it to slip, I'm sure it will not. But I can expect much ridicule if I am mistaken.
At the dawn of the Industrial Age, the Western world broke away, in evolutionary terms, from Mediterranean, Indian, and Asian societies to follow new paths dominated by reason. Nevertheless, throughout the Renaissance, strong attachments to the ancient beliefs remained, and reason was put to work in their service, before being freed from its shackles by the success of Descartes' theories and the birth of the Enlightenment movement in England and France. At the dawn of the Industrial Age, at the dawn of the Industrial Age,
Mines were dug, steel was cast, bridges were built, and steam was now produced. This made the 19th century the age of coal and metal. Smoke now billowed from machines in Europe and the New World. The middle classes thrived and grew rich thanks to this new technology. Stock trading systems were invented to develop new industries. The poor left the countryside and went to work in steel plants. Farmers could not live off their land anymore, and so they became miners, stokers, or metallurgists. New slaves of the industrial world began crowding into towns. But the quest for scientific discovery continued. Researchers were interested in a strange and mysterious phenomenon that made hair stand up on end and attracted light objects to an ebony stick rubbed with a piece of cloth. Electricity. Scientists such as Franklin, Volta, Ampere, Ohm, Maxwell, Hertz, and Faraday sought, improved, and discovered. Very soon, electrical inventions followed one another, and it was not long before important applications were devised. Batteries, bulbs, electric heaters, and motors. The electricity fairy established herself in towns and took over daily life. Humanity underwent a new evolution.
Now that you, the mayor of the town, has agreed to finance the lighting of the streets of the town, the robbers will not dare to accost honest folk under the light of the lamps. This new safety should convince the population to participate in the setting up of the power station. And what about the factory that will soon power their machines with electricity? Your investment is risk-free.
All power to you, Edison, power to you. I'm with you. I too am convinced that electricity will take the place of steam, and our towns will be rid of this infernal black smoke.
My wife doesn't believe a word of it when I tell her that soon there'll be electricity in all houses. She sends me packing, calling me a dreamer. She means well, but it irritates me that she doesn't believe me.
Don't get angry, but your wife might well be right. Personally, I don't think we'll all have lighting in our houses soon. The rich, maybe, but the likes of us.
No, Mr. Tesla. Wouldn't it be great if your invention could do the work instead of me? You could put it in a machine that eats up dust, or in a machine that rubs the floor to make it shine. Pray tell, what uses will your motor be put to? Meanwhile, it's Muggins here who's still sweating away.
The alternating current, dear assistant, can produce significantly greater power than the continuous current without causing either the contacts or the conductors to overheat. The alternator of my induction motor gives a great driving force at a constant speed. What's more, it requires almost no maintenance.
Your attention, please. Your attention, please. The arc lamp has already been a revolution. The incandescent lamp has provided a longer-lasting lamp, but it blackens very quickly. I present to you today an incandescent lamp that lasts a long time, yet leaves no deposit. This lamp will soon be burning in all our homes.
Scientists soon realized the great importance of using electricity. particularly in the field of communication. Work on electromagnetism by the Frenchman André-Marie Ampère helped the Englishmen Cook and Wheatstone develop the first electric telegraph. Then Samuel Morse, an American, designed his famous system of dots and dashes in 1843. A great revolution took place. On March the 10th, 1876, Graham Bell, an American, communicated with his assistant located in another room by transmitting his voice through an electric transmitter. The first telephone link had been established. As is often the case, the telephone initially seemed a strange, harebrained object. It was connected in some homes just so that people could directly hear popular plays live. It was thus christened the theatrophone for the occasion. Gradually, telephone links spread over the entire planet and abolished distances by linking up continents and making it possible to talk to one another from one end of the globe to the other.
Hello. Mr. Rosier. Oh, everything is fine here. Yes, we've started up the new switchboard. Yes, we should be able to handle calls from new subscribers with no problems. Yes, Mr. Rosier, you can count on me. Yes, the young telephonists are managing just fine. Consider it done. Goodbye, Mr. Rosier. Give my regards to Madame Rosier.
Hello, yes? Good morning. What number do you want? Stay on the line.
Hello? Yeah, hello? Yes, of course. One moment, please.
Hello, yes? What number do you require? Stay on the line, please.
In the Western world, religion began to undergo a profound restructuring, dominated by mistrust of the established churches. The 19th century would be marked by the emergence of non-denominational religion, a la carte religion, that prospers today in its myriad New Age forms. At the same time, Africa, Latin America, the Muslim world, and a small section of the population of industrialized countries are experiencing a backlash born of fear and identity crises that is fanning the flames of fundamentalism. In the Western world,
It was not sufficient to have the world within talking distance. Men also wanted to be able to travel rapidly and reach the four corners of the planet. Steam was the answer. Steam was used to drive engines. First came the steam engines, and then came steamboats and cars. At the start of the 20th century, steam railway expanded phenomenally, and luxury steamers crossed the Atlantic in just a few days. Steam-driven cars were built. But these were heavy and not easy to handle. One would have to wait for the development of the internal combustion engine for the automobile industry to boom considerably. In 1886, Gottlieb Daimler, a German, developed the first operational combustion engine. And then the public was offered an abundance of models to choose from. De Dion-Bouton, Rolls-Royce, Panhard, Citroën, Renault, and many others. But it was only in 1908 that Henry Ford in the United States actually made cars more accessible to people by making them more affordable, thanks to assembly line production. Was it for the common good? One may ask oneself this question, as today one sees the overcrowded roads of our cities polluted by a proliferation of cars.
Excuse me, officer. Could you tell me the way to the police station?
Of course. Take the third left, then first left, and first left again, and you're there.
Well, wouldn't it be easier if I went down here and turned right?
Well, yes, but that's a one-way street now. You know, now there's so much more traffic, things have to be organized so that everyone can move about freely.
Oh, right. Thank you, officer.
My pleasure.
Oh, what traffic. It's getting worse every day.
I'm fed up of always having to rely on him. One of these days, I'm going to have to learn to drive.
Right, then. We need 5 passenger carriages and 3 goods wagons for the 8095. But which locomotive shall I hitch up to all that?
Oh, these points. What a fantastic invention they are.
Hey, your machine doesn't seem very hot. It's scarcely smoking. You do know that you have to clear the track in less than half an hour, don't you?
So why don't you call Gaston then? It's not my job to put the coal in the furnace.
Oh, all right. I'll go and fetch him. He must be around somewhere, the bloody animal.
Good. That way, when he arrives, a blow on the whistle and we'll be off.
With the telephone, men could communicate with each other by transmitting their voices down copper wires. In 1897, a new revolution took place in the field of communication. Marconi, an Italian, suggested a form of transmission based on the propagation of waves without using wires, the radio. Large companies soon obtained licenses and monopolized broadcasting. The first radio station was built in 1920 in the United States. By 1922, there were already more than 400 radio stations. In the field of photography, Nicéphore Niepce was the first in 1826 to make a photographic image. This technique of reproducing an image quickly became popular, but a question arose. How could one capture and simulate movement? The answer to this was found on December the 28th, 1895, at the Grand Café in Paris, where the Lumière brothers, Louis and Auguste, organized the first public display of the motion picture projector they had just perfected and patented. This projection marked the beginning of a new form of art that would soon engulf the entire planet, cinema. One could transmit sounds using waves, and one could also project moving pictures on a screen. A picture radio was the only thing that remained to be invented. This was done in 1923. John Logie Baird, a Scotsman, developed a system that could transmit pictures through waves. The television was born. It took many more years for the technique to improve. And then, from the mid-1950s, the TV invaded our world. Televisions appeared in homes everywhere, bringing with them a flood of pictures every day. Its power of persuasion rapidly changed people's outlook and habits.
Take a look at these old radios. Some of them are really lovely. Can you believe that these were ultra-modern at the time? Oh, we could use some of these in the program, couldn't we?
Ooh, Stephanie, look at this. There are even some recordings from the 30s.
If you ask your grandfather, there's a good chance that he made his own set from crystal. Many young people from that era were excited by this extraordinary invention. Hertzian waves propagating invisibly through the air and walls. That may seem natural to us these days, but at the time, it was new and incredible. That sound okay? Where's the damn makeup artist?
Our production ready? Everything's fine this end. We're just waiting for the green light from the AD.
Oh, what am I supposed to do with all these archives? I had to watch them all to prepare the program, and I bet there's still going to be changes made to the broadcast. The entire history of radio. There are quite a few choices to be made. I mean, we can't show it all, can we?
Oh, we need to get a move on. The program starts in a few minutes.
In the Western world,
Wenn Sie die Welt ohne Waffen nicht wollen, gut, dann deutsches Volk, trage du jetzt eine Waffe, stärke dich
Je me dis tant qu'il fait soleil ou bien la pluie ne change pas mon humeur. La joie est dans mon cœur. Et si je peux...
Carpentier se lance à l'attaque. Fin oblige Dempsey à déplacer sa ligne. De gauche à la face de Dempsey. Une droite. Dempsey se découvre un peu. Il semble plus à l'aise qu'au début.
Ici, Londres. Veuillez écouter maintenant quelques messages personnels. Pierrot ressemble à son grand-père.
Since my annual message to the Congress on January 4th last, I have not addressed the general public over the air.
Et heureusement, la tristesse n'a pas duré longtemps. Et voilà maintenant pour finir un maroquinier. C'est notre dernier concurrent. Notre dernier concurrent est jeune, il se présente bien. Il a 18 ans d'ailleurs.
It was at the turn of the last century that Marconi first succeeded in transmitting radio waves over distance. His invention would quickly become the popular radio, a device for global communication. Thanks to the emergence of tube sets in place of the original crystal sets, the listening public grew larger and larger, tuning in religiously to early broadcasts such as the famous boxing match between Jack Dempsey and Georges Carpentier.
Carpentier se lance à l'attaque. Fin oblige Dempsey à déplacer sa ligne. Deux gauches à la face de Dempsey. Une droite. Dempsey se découvre un peu.
It was not long before the political powers of the age, right across the spectrum of beliefs and persuasions, were using this sensational medium for their own ends. From Roosevelt reassuring his citizens to Nazi propaganda expounding its nationalist themes, all parties were keen to take advantage of this revolutionary broadcasting device. During the war, and even as the bombs fell all around, listeners would huddle together to hear the famous talent contests where amateur singers were sent packing by the sound of a gong.
C'est notre dernier concurrent. Notre dernier concurrent est jeune, il se présente bien. Il a 18 ans d'ailleurs.
Les sanglots longs des violons de l'automne bercent mon cœur d'une langueur monotone. This poem by Verlaine, broadcast by the BBC, signalled the Normandy landing. Thanks to coded messages like this, British radio kept occupied Europe informed, thus playing a crucial role in the fight to defend democracy against the threat of Nazi
Veuillez
dictatorship.
écouter maintenant quelques messages personnels. Pierrot ressemble à son
The
grand-père.
advent of the affordable and compact transistor radio, soon to run on batteries, made radio a truly universal medium. Now it was everywhere and accessible to all. From this point on, it was to increasingly target young people with a large amount of airtime devoted to popular music.
Je me dis tant il fait, soleil ou bien la pluie, ne change pas mon humeur, la joie est dans mon cœur.
Our ancestors considered the transmission of pictures from one end of the planet to the other a surreal dream, but they would never have imagined in their wildest dreams that men would ever fly in the sky, like birds. In 1783, the Montgolfier brothers, working on the principle that warm air is lighter than cool air, took off in their funny balloon over an unbelieving crowd that had gathered in Annonay in France. But a hot air balloon has its limitations. It was subject to the vagaries of the wind and was difficult to navigate. Very often risking their lives, men set out to get machines that were heavier than air off the ground. But they had to wait for the development of internal combustion engines that were sufficiently powerful and light for the aeronautic industry to really take off. In December 1903, the Wright brothers made the first flight worthy of the name, with a motorized engine at Kitty Hawk in North Carolina. Barely had the first planes taken off when scientists began working on a project that would allow a vehicle to go out of the Earth's atmosphere. In 1926, Robert Goddard, an American, was one of the first scientists to perfect the principle of rockets. From the 1960s, the Americans and the Soviets embarked on a frantic race to conquer space. In 1961, Yuri Gagarin, a Russian, was put into orbit around the Earth. Then, in 1969, the Americans put two of their astronauts, Neil Armstrong and Edwin Aldrin, on the Moon. For the first time, man had left his native planet. And even if later this journey to the Moon would seem just a small step, it was indeed a giant step for mankind.
I wonder how they ever managed to fly in such an old crate.
Well, that's simple, old chap. Pure guts. Without the Wright brothers, all this would never have been possible.
Do you think so?
It's common knowledge.
Dear listeners, here I am right now at the Air Show, the exhibition so eagerly awaited by enthusiasts. The crowd is already large as they flock to get a close look at these magnificent flying machines. All the machines that tell the history of the conquest of the skies are here. The Wright brothers plane, which first showed that an object did not have to be lighter than air to fly. And of course, the Blériot plane, plus Lindbergh's Spirit of St. Louis, as well as the famous Boeing 707 and its incredible jet engines. You can also marvel at the Gemini Capsule, plus the Sputnik, the rocket that took Gagarin into space. This really is an event not to be missed, dear listeners.
Daddy, look at the Gemini Capsule. It can fit 2 men inside, and there's a calculator that can make it change orbit.
Wow, you certainly know all about it, son. Where did you learn all that?
Well, it's written on it here.
Oh, I see.
In the West.
Man's imagination and curiosity drove him to yet another dream, the universal machine. In 1666, the German philosopher and mathematician Leibniz had already foreseen the construction of a machine that could think. Even so, it took hundreds of years of research in logic and mathematics, as well as major discoveries in electronics, for computer science to be born in the 20th century. The first computers that were in fact huge calculators came into being in 1946 in the United States. They occupied an entire room. Then, as technology advanced, computers became smaller and smaller and more powerful. At the end of the 1970s, the first personal microcomputer appeared in California. Computer science soon became indispensable for companies, and it penetrated into households. The Internet was first conceived of by the American military between 1970 and 1975. Scientists latched onto the idea and began working on it from the 1980s. The Internet then made terrific progress and became accessible to all in the last decade of the 20th century. After the printing press, this network of networks was the next major evolution. It changed the modes of communication and laid the foundations of a cyberspace, a virtual world where information travels at the speed of light and where a new society is being born.
I know what we're gonna do. Listen, we're going to sell the computer pre-assembled with a keyboard and even the monitor as an option. All of it can be packaged in gray plastic. No, grayish beige. That'll be warmer. Then the customer can take away a ready-to-use machine. No more visiting him to attach the connectors, motherboard, the processor, and the disk drive. He just plugs and plays.
It's gonna cost a bit to put together these machines.
Oh, perhaps, but thanks to the new component you've invented, we have a simpler motherboard, so we make maximum profit on the assembly of the components. And just think of all the delighted people. You go home, unpack it, plug it in, grab hold of your basic manual, and start programming without even picking up a soldering iron.
We need this project. Everything being done right now is already out of date. 8-bit will be history soon. I feel it, Sam. This is our chance.
But do you realize what's in this contract? They have the right to use everything they see here, even if it's not connected with the projects.
That's a risk we have to take. If we work with them, we'll really be there when it happens. Look, Sam, everything we've got won't make us number one on its own. But if we use them, we can do it. I'm gonna sign.
Think carefully. We currently have a cutting-edge project that we are moving forward in an unusual way. We need people like you, but you know us lawyers. Before we can discuss the subject, you will have to sign our model contract, thereby giving up your legal rights in relation to anything we may say or do. Until this agreement has been signed, I can discuss nothing but the weather with you. And even then, not the weather in the city where our head of office is.
I know what we're gonna do. Listen, we're going to sell the computer pre-assembled with a keyboard and even the monitor as an option. All of it can be packaged in gray plastic. No, grayish beige. That'll be warmer. Then the customer can take away a
cut stone, fire, farming, the wheel and navigation, iron and minerals, writing, coins and trade, the printing press. Going round the world, the Industrial Revolution, electricity, the telephone, the car, the railways, radio and television, the aircraft industry, computer science. What extraordinary advances, ever since man took destiny into his own hands. In the course of thousands of years, man has never stopped progressing, and this constant progress has allowed him to master his environment. His character was gradually formed by religious ideas and philosophical quests. Today, have we been able to fulfill the hopes of our distant ancestors? Judging by the extent of problems that remain to be solved, we still have a way to go. Overpopulated cities, pollution, stress, loneliness, crime, delinquency, drugs, poverty, inequality, the third world and the fourth world. Our complex societies are less and less able to control ever-increasing growth, which is constantly opening up new avenues, some of which turn into dead ends. We constantly run the risk of being dragged backwards by power struggles amongst men. We still have a long way to go, and many avenues to explore. Without aspiring to the ultimate truth, 5 major challenges face mankind in the years ahead. The first condition for the survival of our species is the availability of health care for one and all. It is sad to acknowledge that there are still men and women in the 21st century who have to fight for survival. We need to fight against famine, malnutrition, and diseases. We have the means to do so. A code of ethics should be at the heart of all we undertake. In view of widespread intolerance, we need to go back to the values of justice, solidarity, equality, respect, and dignity for all men and women. We need to remember that technological, commercial, and scientific progress should be, above all, for the good of humanity. There will be no future if we cannot live in harmony with our environment. Our ancestors used resources from the earth to find elements that were useful to their comfort and well-being, and were still able to leave us the legacy of a living and beautiful planet. Steps should be taken immediately to devise new ways of sharing out wealth. Up until now, trade and commerce have been the driving force behind evolution and progress, putting men in contact and thereby creating resources. Today, globalization of markets has made it possible for a few men to amass enormous wealth. Benefits obtained by collective efforts should belong to the whole of humanity, and everyone should be able to eat his fill and live decently. And finally, education is a basic ingredient if humanity is to preserve its acquired knowledge and make further progress. Access to education for all, equal opportunities and social justice are, no doubt, absolute priorities. We will progress only if we share our knowledge with others and develop a worldwide collective intelligence. So, what will the third millennium be like? It's for us to decide.